Hello, welcome back to Lizzy Co and the Artist's Way, featuring me, Lizzy Co, and The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. We are at the halfway point. Woohoo! Um, this past week, I was checking out week 6 of the program titled Recovering a Sense of Abundance. And I'd like to open by talking about the tasks I did this past week, because they're pretty illuminating in a way that I didn't really experience before this point. Um, so, a lot of the tasks reminded me of being in preschool. They were tasks to pick 5 flowers or leaves, which is something I did just on a walk around the block in my neighborhood. I brought a little container with me, and I just let my eye get drawn to whatever it was drawn to, and when I saw a little sprig of something that seemed beautiful, I let myself just pick a little bit of it and collect it. And I'll share a picture of the final collection in the description of this episode if you're curious. And it reminded me a lot of the adorable nature walks that I used to take a lot as a very young child, both with my parents and also in preschool before uh, that stopped really being a thing that happened for kids. Other tasks were to just send postcards to 5 friends. I amended this to include text messages because I think that's in the same spirit as a postcard, but updated from the 90s. And I realized that I already do that all the time. I do have a nice group of people who I regularly check in with, and realizing that was so comforting because that wasn't always something I felt like I had access to. And I'm learning that I just went ahead and built it. So good job, me. Other things that I looked at and did were one thing was to check in on any changes in my financial situation or my perspective on it. And this is probably a coincidence, but um, my salary contract negotiations finished up, and I was able to get a signed contract for my salary for my day job, which is much bigger than what I was making before and is going to give me a lot more freedom. So I don't know that that's necessarily due to the artist's way because that was in the works before I started this program, but I think possibly, my change in behavior as I worked through these weeks led to them speeding up that process. Who's to say? Um, so I noticed, I just noticed a lot of exploration of all of these different things that I already have in my life. And it felt really good to have a week where I wasn't digging into past traumas or looking at things I want to change about myself. It felt like a vacation. So thanks, Julia Cameron. I really needed that rest. So I'm curious to see what next week brings. So that all being said, let's do the check-in for this week before we dig into what comes next. Number 1, how many days this week did you do your morning pages? How was the experience? So I did them about 2/3 of the week this week. And what I noticed is that I'm finding it easier to get past the pleasantries of the beginning of the entry, and it's faster now, getting to the point where I'm actually saying what's inside. And it's faster now getting to the point where my handwriting goes from neat and restrained to scrawly and almost illegible sometimes because I'm really trying to keep pace with my thoughts rather than editing my thoughts for what should be on the page. So that's been really cool to see that shift happen. I'm curious to see what happens down the road. Number 2, did you do your artist date this week? Have you considered allowing yourself to? Um, yeah, this is the thing I still struggle with. I feel like I I guess I did this in a way. This is as I record this is the weekend of the anniversary of my father's passing. It's 2 years since he left this earth, and I decided for the sake of my own health and for my relationships with the ones around me, I was going to take off the day before through the day after his passing day, just to reflect and feel some feelings that are not really appropriate for a customer service setting. So that feels like it was my artist date this week, was time set aside for care that wouldn't normally be in my week. And I'm really glad I did it. And I think it would have been a shame to just try to plow through such a difficult date without acknowledging it in any way. 3. Did you experience any synchronicity this week? What was it? I don't know if I did. I think I just noticed a lot of things that reminded me of my dad. And again, I'm sure that has more to do with it being so close to the anniversary of his passing. But I did find myself noticing all of the ways that he is still present in my life. So I guess I experienced synchronicity. I'm still not sure. I think I'm still coming in on a definition for it. And finally, were there any other issues this week that you consider significant for your recovery? I would say reckoning with the memories of the way my father passed, which was not good, and the way I had to cut ties with my family afterward for my own health. Thinking about all of that stuff was pretty distracting, but also maybe that was the point. Who's to say? So, check-in complete. Let's take a peek now at week 7, which is titled Recovering a Sense of Connection. Section 1, Listening. The ability to listen is a skill we are honing with both our morning pages and our artist dates. The pages train us to hear past our censor. The artist dates help us to pick up the voice of inspiration. While both of these activities are apparently unconnected to the actual act of making art, they are critical to the creative process. Art is not about thinking something up. It is about the opposite, getting something down. The directions are important here. If we are trying to think something up, we are straining to reach for something that's just beyond our grasp, up there in the stratosphere where art lives on high. When we get something down, there is no strain. We're not doing, we're getting. Someone or something else is doing the doing. Instead of reaching for inventions, we are engaged in listening. When an actor is in the moment, he or she is engaged in listening for the next right thing creatively. When a painter is painting, he or she may begin with a plan, but that plan is soon surrendered to the painting's own plan. This is often expressed as the brush takes the next stroke. In dance, in composition, in sculpture, the experience is the same. We are more the conduit than the creator of what we express. Art is an act of tuning in and dropping down the well. It is as though all the stories, painting, music, performances in the world live just under the surface of our normal consciousness. Like an underground river, they flow through us as a stream of ideas that we can tap down into. As artists, we drop down the well into the stream. We hear what's down there and we act on it. More like taking dictation than anything fancy having to do with art. Yeah, I think this is a good description of how it feels when I'm writing poetry. I never sit down in front of my computer thinking, okay, time to write some poetry time, okay, gonna be a sonnet. Nope, that doesn't work for me at all. I If you know anything about pathological demand resistance, or avoidance, excuse me, not resistance, pathological demand avoidance, that approach is never going to work with me. So instead, I do something like what is described in the book. I wait for something to feel like it needs to come out, and then when it's ready to come out, I let it out. It's not unlike pooping, I guess. Moving on. A friend of mine is a superb film director who is known for his meticulous planning. And yet, he often shoots most brilliantly from the seat of his pants, quickly grabbing a shot that comes to him as he works. These moments of clear inspiration require that we move into them on faith. We can practice these small leaps of faith daily in our pages and on our artist dates. We can learn not only to listen but also to hear with increasing accuracy that inspired, intuitive voice that says, "Do this, try this, say this." Most writers have had the experience of catching a poem or a paragraph or two of formed writing. We consider these finds to be small miracles. What we fail to realize is that they are, in fact, the norm. We are the instrument more than the author of our work. Michelangelo is said to have remarked that he released David from the marble block he found him in. The painting has a life of its own. I try to let it come through, said Jackson Pollock. When I teach screenwriting, I remind my students that their movie already exists in its entirety. Their job is to listen for it, watch it with their mind's eye, and write it down. The same may be said of all art. If painting and sculptures wait for us, then sonatas wait for us. Books, plays, and poems wait for us too. Our job is simply to get them down. To do that, we drop down the well. Some people find it easier to picture the stream of inspiration as being like radio waves of all sorts being broadcast at all times. With practice, we learn how to hear the desired frequency on request. We tune in to the frequency we want. Like a parent, we learn to hear the voice of our current brainchild among the other children's voices. Once you accept that it is natural to create, you can begin to accept a second idea, that the Creator will hand you whatever you need for the project. The minute you are willing to accept the help of this collaborator, you will see useful bits of help everywhere in your life. Be alert. There is a second voice, a higher harmonic, adding to and augmenting your inner creative voice. This voice frequently shows itself in synchronicity. I just realized I did experience some synchronicity. I have recently connected with a new friend who is much more involved in the poetry community than I am, and out of nowhere this person is just offering me these opportunities that I'm realizing I do deserve. I just didn't really know how to pursue because I wasn't aware of them. So yeah, synchronicity is happening for me. And moving on. You will hear the dialogue you need, find the right song for the sequence, see the exact paint color you almost had in mind, and so forth. You will have the experience of finding things, books, seminars, tossed out stuff that happen to fit with what you are doing. Learn to accept the possibility that the universe is helping you with what you are doing. Become willing to see the hand of God and accept it as a friend's offer to help with what you are doing. Because many of us unconsciously harbor the fearful belief that God would find our creations decadent or frivolous or worse, we tend to discount this creator-to-creator help. Try to remember that God is the great artist. Artists like other artists. Expect the universe to support your dream. It will. Yeah, having grown up Catholic, this sounds almost too good to be true. But also it seems like a really nice way to live, so maybe I'll stay open to it. Next section, perfectionism. Tilly Olson correctly calls it the knife of the perfectionist attitude in art. You may call it something else. Getting it right, you may call it, or fixing it before I go any further. You may call it having standards. What you should be calling it is perfectionism. Perfectionism has nothing to do with getting it right. It has nothing to do with fixing things. It has nothing to do with standards. Perfectionism is a refusal to let yourself move ahead. Oh, shit. Oh, come on, Julia Cameron, constantly calling me out on my... Oh, come on. It is a loop, An obsessive, debilitating, closed system that causes you to get stuck in the details of what you are writing or painting or making and to lose sight of the whole. Instead of creating freely and allowing errors to reveal themselves later as insights, oh boy, again, fully called out, we often get mired in getting the details right. We correct our originality into a uniformity that lacks passion and spontaneity. Do not fear mistakes, Miles Davis told us. There are none. The perfectionist fixes one line of a poem over and over until no lines are right. The perfectionist redraws the chin line on a portrait until the paper tears. The perfectionist writes so many versions of scene one that she never gets to the rest of the play. The perfectionist writes, paints, creates with one eye on her audience. Instead of enjoying the process, the perfectionist is constantly grading the results. The perfectionist has married the logic side of the brain. The critic reigns supreme in the perfectionist's creative household. A brilliant descriptive prose passage is critiqued with a white glove approach. What about this comma? Is that how you spell? For the perfectionist, there are no first drafts, rough sketches, warm-up exercises. Every draft is meant to be final, perfect, set in stone. Yeah, this reminds me of the mentality in the music school environment I spent so many years in. I did an undergrad degree and then straight into a master's degree in flute performance, which meant I spent 6 straight years in a really perfectionistic environment, just like the one that we're talking about here, where there were no first drafts, there were only final drafts, and woe betide you if you showed any weakness. Because there were so many more people trying for space than there were spaces to give, so only perfection was accepted. And sometimes not even then. Moving on. Midway through a project, the perfectionist decides to read it all over, outline it, see where it's going. And where is it going? Nowhere, very fast. The perfectionist is never satisfied. The perfectionist never says, "This is pretty good, I think I'll just keep going." To the perfectionist, there is always room for improvement. The perfectionist calls this humility. In reality, it is egotism. It is pride that makes us want to write a perfect script, paint a perfect painting, perform a perfect audition monologue. Perfectionism is not a quest for the best. It is a pursuit of the worst in ourselves, the part that tells us that nothing we do will ever be good enough, that we should try again. No, we should not. A painting is never finished. It simply stops in interesting places, said Paul Gardner. A book is never finished, but at a certain point you stop writing it and go on to the next thing. A film is never cut perfectly, but at a certain point you let go and call it done. That is a normal part of creativity, letting go. We always do the best that we can by the light we have to see by. This reminds me of when I used to bake bread for a living. And something I learned is that there is too much of a good thing when it comes to working that dough. You can work it too much so that it won't rise properly and you'll end up with a really sad, flat loaf. And I think that is something that they're trying to express here, that sometimes there is a point where it's best to stop and just let something be finished. Next section, risk. Question: what would I do if I didn't have to do it perfectly? Answer: a great deal more than I am. We've all heard that the unexamined life is not worth living, but consider too that the unlived life is not worth examining. The success of a creative recovery hinges on our ability to move out of the head and into action. This brings us squarely to risk. Most of us are practiced at talking ourselves out of risk. We are skilled speculators on the probable pain of self-exposure. I'll look like an idiot, we say, conjuring images of our first acting class, our first hobbled short story, our terrible drawings. Part of the game here is lining up the masters and measuring our baby steps against their perfected craft. We don't compare our student films to George Lucas's student films. Instead, we compare them to Star Wars. We deny that in order to do something well, we must first be willing to do it badly. Instead, we opt for setting our limits at the point where we feel assured of success. Living within these bounds, we may feel stifled, smothered, despairing, bored, but yes, we do feel safe. And safety is a very expensive illusion. I find myself thinking of when I teach latte art in my day job as a cafe manager. And it's pretty vulnerable because you're doing it in front of customers and you're doing it in front of your colleagues. And, uh, much like they're talking about here, you have to do it badly before you can do it well, because it's just a pretty particular skill to learn. And anybody can learn it, but you need someone to teach you, is the thing. And you need to be willing to try it a bunch of times and iterate until you learn how to do those motions just right. And what I've noticed is that there tend to be people who fall into two camps. People will either embrace that awkwardness and be willing to feel silly in the name of learning and trust that nobody is going to give them a hard time, and they engage in that process and they get better and they get really good. And other people are less willing and they say, I'm just not good at it. And they take that on as something about themselves when really it's not that they aren't good at it, it's that they're hesitant to be bad at it, if that makes sense. And it's always a shame to see that happen because it's just not necessary. You don't have to feel that limitation. And I think it's a shame when people feel it because it's usually coming from past experience. And I really wish that people didn't have to carry that sort of fear and shame around the way that I had to for so many years. In order to risk, we must jettison our accepted limits. We must break through I can't because. Because I am too old, too broke, too shy, too proud, self-defended, timorous. Usually, when we say we can't do something, what we mean is that we won't do something unless we can guarantee that we'll do it perfectly. Working artists know the folly of this stance. There is a common joke among directors. Oh yeah, I always know exactly how I should direct the picture, after I'm done directing it. As blocked artists, we unrealistically expect and demand success from ourselves and recognition of that success from others. With that as an unspoken demand, a great many things remain outside our sphere of possibility. As actors, we tend to allow ourselves to be typecast rather than working to expand our range. As singers, we stay married to our safe material. As songwriters, we try to repeat a formula hit. In my case, I discovered that I liked writing sonnets and then wrote literally hundreds of them. In this way, artists who do not appear blocked to the outside eye experience themselves as blocked internally, unable to take the risk of moving into new and more satisfying artistic territory. Yeah, I felt this when I expanded. Well, I started off a couple years ago just posting a little haiku, and then I was exploring sonnets for a while, and then I got really into that groove. And it took a while to feel like I had any right to be composing and posting free verse. I don't know why I felt like there was a gate there to be opened, uh, but yeah, I do think that I was experiencing like a functional block by writing so many sonnets. Once we are willing to accept that anything worth doing might be worth doing badly, our options widen. If I didn't have to do it perfectly, I would try. And then there's space to list 20 things that I would try if I didn't have to do it perfectly. Oh boy, Julia Cameron, you're killing me here. Alright, if I didn't have to do it perfectly, I would try skateboarding. Culinary school. Watchmaking. Oil painting. Dog training. Graphic design, being an influencer, um, clothing design, renovating a house, raising a child, um, mending my own clothing, um, community organizing. Oh, this is really hard, you guys. You should try to come up with 20 things on the spot. Oh my god. Um, investigative reporting. Um, weaving. Shoemaking. Five more. Five more. Interior design. Being a train conductor. Three more. Museum curation. Working in a weed store. And the last one, just being myself. Really myself. Continuing on. In the movie Raging Bull, boxer Jake LaMotta's manager brother explained to him why he should shed some weight and fight an unknown opponent. After an intricate spiel that leaves LaMotta baffled, he concludes, "So do it. If you win, you win, and if you lose, you win." It is always that way with taking risks. To put it differently, very often a risk is worth taking simply for the sake of taking it. There is something enlivening about expanding our self-definition, and a risk does exactly that. Selecting a challenge and meeting it creates a sense of self-empowerment that becomes the ground for further successful challenges. Viewed this way, running a marathon increases your chances of writing a full-length play. Writing a full-length play gives you a leg up on a marathon. Complete the following sentence. If I didn't have to do it perfectly, I would try. There we go. I already did that one. Moving on. Jealousy. Jealousy, I've often heard, is a normal human emotion. When I hear that, I think, maybe your jealousy, not mine. My jealousy roars in the head, tightens the chest, massages my stomach lining with a cold fist as it searches out the best grip. I have long regarded jealousy as my greatest weakness. Only recently have I seen it for the tough love friend that it is. Jealousy is a map. Each of our jealousy maps differs. Each of us will probably be surprised by some of the things we discover on our own. I, for example, have never been eaten alive with resentment over the success of women novelists, but I took an unhealthy interest in the fortunes and misfortunes of women playwrights. I was their harshest critic until I wrote my first play. Isn't that always how it is? With that action, my jealousy vanished, replaced by a feeling of camaraderie. My jealousy had actually been a mask for my fear of doing something I really wanted to do, but was not yet brave enough to take action toward. Jealousy is always a mask for fear. Fear that we aren't able to get what we want. Frustration that somebody else seems to be getting what is rightfully ours, even if we are too frightened to reach for it. Yeah, this is something I experienced a lot growing up. My mom didn't have a lot growing up, and she did a good job of giving me a better life than she had. I'll give her that. However, there is a wide gulf between better than she had and like a reasonable, sane childhood experience, unfortunately. So I noticed that my mother would express jealousy when I would go to other children's homes and have these really normal, lovely, just chill middle class experiences that she never got to have. I would come home and tell them to her, and I learned quickly not to share that stuff because I could just see her burning with resentment that it wasn't her. Healthy mother stuff. At its root, jealousy is a stingy emotion. It doesn't allow for the abundance and multiplicity of the universe. Jealousy tells us there is room for only one poet, one painter, one whatever you dream of being. The truth revealed by action in the direction of our dreams is that there is room for all of us. But jealousy produces tunnel vision. It narrows our ability to see things in perspective. It strips us of our ability to see other options. The biggest lie that jealousy tells us is that we have no choice but to be jealous. Perversely, jealousy strips us of our will to act when action holds the key to our freedom. The jealousy map, an exercise. Your jealousy map will have 3 columns. In the first column, name those whom you are jealous of. Next to each name, write why. Be as specific and accurate as you can. In the third column, list one action you can take to move toward creative risk and out of jealousy. When jealousy bites, like a snake bite, it requires immediate antidote. On paper, make your jealousy map. Okay, so there's who, why, and the antidote. So I guess I can think generally speaking of poets on Substack who seem to get more attention than I do. That's just a sort of a general figure I would say I'm jealous of. And I'm jealous of them because I want that. And an action I can take is to just keep doing what I'm doing, which is continue to show up and write what I'm writing and trust that the audience will come. Other people that I'm jealous of are people who like their parents and like to go visit them, seek out that relationship. And I'm jealous because I want that. Again, I'm jealous because I want that for myself. And the antidote is to remember that I have chosen family who I do like, and that those relationships are just as real as relationships that are determined by DNA. Even the biggest changes begin with small ones. Green is the color of jealousy, but it is also the color of hope. When you learn to harness its fierce energy on your own behalf, jealousy is part of the fuel toward a greener and more verdant future. Archaeology and exercise. The phrases that follow are more of your sleuth work. Very often we have buried parts of ourselves that can be uncovered by some digging. Not only will your answers tell you what you missed in the past, they will tell you what you can be doing now to comfort and encourage your artist child. It is not too late, no matter what your ego tells you. Oh boy, here we go. Complete these phrases. As a kid, I missed the chance to express myself without fear of punishment. As a kid, I lacked a clear routine. As a kid, I could have used more specific and concrete instructions for what I was supposed to do. As a kid, I dreamed of being someone who could speak freely. As a kid, I wanted an adult who was safe. In my house, we never had enough money. As a kid, I needed more hugs. I am sorry that I will never again see my grandmother's farm. For years, I have missed and wondered about my mother. I haven't talked to her for a couple years now, and I do want her to be okay, but I also don't want to get back into the toxic relationship that we had. And lastly, I beat myself up about the loss of my relationship with my family. I still feel like I should have just given up and not been who I am and just say and do whatever I need to do so that everyone can be happy with me. That pull is still really strong, and I hope someday it gets a little less so. It is important to acknowledge our positive inventory as well as our shortfalls. Take positive stock of what good you have to build on in the present. Finish these phrases. I have a loyal friend in I can think of a few people actually, and I don't want to name names since this is going out into the universe, but I do have a few people that I consider loyal friends, and I consider myself a loyal friend too in return. One thing I like about my town is Boston is great. There's a lot to like about Boston. I think we try really hard to take care of people. I don't know that we do it perfectly, but we try. And I think there's a lot of kind of neighborhood spirit among the different neighborhoods here, which is really interesting to see. And uh, it makes it feel a little small town-ish almost. I think I have a nice everyday routine. I think that's something I gave myself that I needed when I was a kid. And it's something that brings me a lot of comfort, that life is not 100% predictable, but I do have a good template for the day that keeps me healthy, happy, and sane. Writing my morning pages has shown me that I can pay attention to myself for a little bit in a way that is not involving anybody else. And I am, for a little bit, taking myself out of commission as a caregiver, and I am just focusing on myself. I am taking a greater interest in I think building relationships. I believe I am getting better at making myself do things that are good for me, even if one of my various disabilities is telling me not to take care of myself that day. My artist has started to pay more attention to I think small details out in the world. I think my artist is not trying to shut out the world so much when I leave the house anymore. My self-care is coming back online, I'd say. I was not doing a lot of it for a little bit there, and I think it's starting to come back. I feel more hydrated, relaxed, just better cared for. And 10, possibly my creativity is something that is better expressed than stifled. All right, so let's explore the tasks for this coming week, shall we? Like always, we have 10. Number 1, make this phrase a mantra. Treating myself like a precious object will make me strong. Watercolor or crayon or calligraph this phrase. Post it where you will see it daily. We tend to think being hard on ourselves will make us strong, but it is cherishing ourselves that gives us strength. Yeah, this reminds me a lot of, again, just the way I was brought up. I had a really tough home life, and I thought that made me strong, but then I looked at the resiliency of the kids I grew up with who had nice parents, and I was like, maybe this system is a little broken. 2, give yourself time out to listen to one side of an album just for joy. You may want to doodle as you listen, allowing yourself to draw the shapes, emotions, thoughts you hear in the music. Notice how just 20 minutes can refresh you. Learn to take these mini artist dates to break stress and allow insight. 3. Take yourself into a sacred space, a church, synagogue, library, grove of trees, and allow yourself to savor the silence and healing solitude. Each of us has a personal idea of what sacred space is. For me, a large clock store or a great aquarium store can engender a sense of timeless wonder. Experiment. I think for me, this is the beautiful arboretum that's located not far from where I live. It's this beautiful wonderland of trees. It's great. 4. Create one wonderful smell in your house with soup, incense, fir branches, candles, whatever. 5. Wear your favorite item of clothing for no special occasion. 6. Buy yourself one wonderful pair of socks, one wonderful pair of gloves, one wonderfully comforting, self-loving something. 7. Collage. Collect a stack of at least 10 magazines, which you will allow yourself to freely dismember. Setting a 20-minute time limit for yourself, tear literally through the magazines, collecting any images that reflect your life or interests. Think of this collage as a form of pictorial autobiography. Include your past, present, future, and your dreams. It is okay to include images you simply like. Keep pulling until you have a good stack of images, at least 20. Now take a sheet of newspaper, a stapler, or some tape or glue, and arrange your images in a way that pleases you. Sounds pretty fun. 8. Quickly list 5 favorite films. Do you see any common denominators among them? Are they romances, adventures, period pieces, political dramas, family epics, thrillers? Do you see traces of your cinematic themes in your collage? 9. Name your favorite topics to read about. Comparative religion, movies, ESP, physics, rags to riches, betrayal, love triangles, scientific breakthroughs, sports. Are these topics in your collage? 10. Give your collage a place of honor. Even a secret place of honor is all right. In your closet, in a drawer, anywhere that is yours. You may want to do a new one every few months, or collage more thoroughly a dream you are trying to accomplish. Gosh, this all sounds a lot like how I spent my early teen years. My goodness, was I accidentally doing the artist's way as a high schooler? Maybe so. Well, so thank you once again for joining me for another episode of Lizzy Co and the Artist's Way, featuring me, Lizzy Co, and The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I am so excited that you continue to join and listen and watch. It's such an honor. So please come back next time when I talk about week 8, which is titled Recovering a Sense of Strength. I'll see you then.